Hello, Bakochujen here, and this video is a guide to the visual novel database. So first off, I'll start with talking about what visual novel database is. As the name implies, it's a database for visual novels, like how IMDb works for movies and TV series, or MyAnimeList and AniDB works for anime. You can find information about just about every visual novel out there, and you can look at things like user votes and reviews to figure out how well regarded different visual novels are. Basically, it's the main place to find information about visual novels, and nothing really comes close. As such, Visual Novel Database is very important to the English-speaking visual novel fanbase, as it is the best tool to find interesting visual novels. In this video, I will guide you through the different features of the Visual Novel Database, which I hope helps you get better at finding visual novels that you will enjoy. Well then, to start off, let's begin with the Visual Novel Browse function. First off is the display options, where you can decide how you see the visual novels you search for. Here you can add things like being able to see developers, popularity score, Bayesian rating, and vote average. Popularity score being a score between 0 and 100 showing how popular the visual novel is, and Bayesian rating being based on the vote average, but also taking popularity into account. So visual novels with very few votes don't end up being considered the highest rated visual novels. Yeah, I think Muv-Luv Alternative fits better at the top than these titles. Then there is how they are ordered. Whether you want to order them alphabetically based on title, based on release date, popularity score, Bayesian rating, vote average, or the number of votes. Also, clicking again on what you've chosen changes whether it starts from the top or from the bottom. You can also choose how many results you want to see for each page. Then at last you can choose the format. Here you choose between rows, cards and grids. Rows is just the plain text, with cards you get a small cover image with text on the side, and with grid you get a large image with text showing up when you hover over the image. All of these settings can be saved as default, and I personally use the grid format with Bayesian rating, going from highest to lowest, and having all of the columns visible. Okay, now that the visual novels display how you want them to, it is time to go into the actual search function. So first off you have the language, where you can narrow it down to those visual novels available in the language you choose. For instance, if you want to look for visual novels available in English, or for some reason want to read them in Macedonian or Urdu. Then there is the original language of the visual novel. For instance, if you want to search for visual novels made in Japan, then you can define the platform it is available for. For instance, Windows or the Switch, or if you're feeling a bit more experimental, maybe the Dreamcast or the PC Engine. Then there are tags. Here you can choose certain elements you want in the visual novel, things like whether it has action, comedy, fantasy, drama, horror, sports, or mystery, as well as things like if it has different archetype of heroines, like tsundere, yandere, or childhood friend, and of course whether it includes a specific fetish you're interested in. There is also the invert button if you want to exclude every visual novel from a certain tag. Of course, what I mentioned just scratches the surface of the types of tags you can search for. Then onto the plus sign, or as it's actually called, add filter. First, let's start with release. Here you can search for what type of release it is, whether it's a trial, a partial release, or a complete release. Then whether it is a patch or a standalone release, and whether it's free or not. Whether it has mosaic censorship, or if the release is official or unofficial. Then you can search for visual novels by different developers, so you only see the visual novels from one developer. For instance, if you want to check out visual novels made by certain companies. Let's say for instance Ubisoft, Moonstone, or ClockUp. Then there is Producer, which I think is really useful for checking out what's available from the different English publishers, like Manga Gamer, Yes USA, Nekonyan, and Sekai Project, to name a few. By the way, I would really recommend trying to use this when searching for good officially licensed visual novel in English. Then you can narrow it down by release date, where you can choose a year or a month during the year or a specific day and either look at what was released at the time or before that time or after that time. Then you can narrow things down based on the resolution of the visual novel. For instance, if you're looking for visual novels with a high resolution, or if you for some reason like reading visual novels at 480p. Okay, those search results were a lot better than I expected. You can also search based on age rating, whether it is a digital download or a specific physical medium, if it is voiced, whether there is animation during the sex scenes or in the story, and then what engine it is in, as well as whether it's on your personal list, which I will talk about later. Then back to the ad filter thing. Here you have more things to choose from, like staff and characters, how long the visual novel is, a threshold for the popularity score, whether it has a lot of votes, or you can search for those with few votes, so you can brag about having read very niche titles. Then lastly, there are things like whether it has a description, has screenshots, or has reviews on the visual novel page, or whether there is an anime that is related to the visual novel. The release page I would just kind of ignore, as it is basically the same thing as the release thing I talked about in the ad filter, but without the display options. Then there are producers, which is just a list of all of the different producers of visual novels in alphabetical order. If you click on them, you just get a plain list of what they worked on. Then there is staff, where you can see the different people involved in making the visual novel. You can click on their names and get a list of titles they worked on. Also, you can search for their languages, their gender, and their role in the development of the visual novel. For instance, if you want to prove that a lot of people working in the visual novel industry are females, just compare the amount of females to male staff and see more females are working on visual novels than men. Then see that this is due to there being far more women being voice actors than there are men, and in other roles there are more men than women. Then find out that outside of voice acting there are more people whose gender are unknown than men and women combined. Guess they don't feel the need to shove their gender down people's throat on their Twitter bios. Then on to characters. Here you can choose the format, whether you see them as rows, cards, or as I see them, grids. Then you can choose to search for things like their role in the story, their gender, how old they are. Okay, can we just agree that anime age is a bit odd? Anyways, back to topic. You can search for a character voiced by specific voice actors, their birthday, character traits, blood types. For some reason Japan has a really weird fetish for blood types. Height, weight, bust, waist, hip, and cup size. So, set does exist. Then, let's move on to tags. Here you can just look through the different tags available. For instance, tags related to the setting, like what kind of universe the story takes place in, the time period, all different areas the visual novel takes place in. Then there is more general things about the plot, like what kind of content is in it, what it's based on, what type of routes it has, and what type of endings it has. Then character types that stand out for all of the different roles of the characters. By the way, Doki Doki Literary Club didn't invent killing off heroines. In themes, you have things like fantasy, drama, romance, science fiction, comedy, horror, action, and of course sexual content, and within those are specific tags related to these broader themes. So if you want weird fetishes but can't think of them yourself, well, looking through tags under sexual content will teach you about all of the messed up things we humans have as fetishes. And I just lost my remaining faith in humanity. Well then, let's forget about that and move onwards to traits. This is basically just tags, but with characters instead of the visual novel itself. Here you have things like details about their hair, eyes, body type, clothes, and items they have, for instance a chainsaw, their personality, their role in the story, what they do, what happened to them, what they do sexually, and what happened to them sexually. Of course, you can also use multiple of these traits to look for more specific characters. Let's say a book-loving blonde tsundere. Okay, I guess they haven't added enough traits on Beatrice from ReZero. So a lesson from this failure is that all tags and traits don't show everything these tags and traits could apply to, as not all tags and traits are applied since, well, there are more than 30,000 visual novels and more than 95,000 characters. Then you can also search up users on Visual Novel Database to see who have just voted on a lot of titles that they've probably never read, and those that have way too large wish lists, those that just registered, and those who were the first ones to join Visual Novel Database. Then the people making lots of edits, and those that has uploaded a lot of images. There is also a discussion board with different categories like announcements, visual novel database discussion, general discussion, visual novels, producers, and users. Then there is a search field where you can search for visual novels using its name. This is the end of part 1 of my guide to the visual novel database, where I primarily focused on the search function. The next part will focus on the user profiles, as well as on the individual pages for visual novels. And yeah, at the end I want to say, if you liked the video, then maybe leave a like, and maybe also subscribe.